what has happened in New York and the mayoral election, the outcome was someone, you look at him, all red lines are on him. He's a Muslim, socialist, yeah, immigrant. It's amazing to see, because the billionaires went, they invested, they paid more than 40, if I'm not mistaken, $40 million against him in this campaign. And after all, Mamdani was, successful in his way of getting to the position. Michael, looking at what has happened in New York, what is your understanding of what has happened, and what does it mean for the future of Democratic Party?
Well, both parties are trying to spin the election. The Democrats are trying to say, well, you see, we won. It's all a rejection of Trump. And the Republicans are trying to make it appear it's all about socialism. And look at the right wing Democrats who won in Virginia and New Jersey. But the fact is that both the Republicans and the Democratic parties lost as a result of New York City. All of the attention, as you've just pointed out, is on New York City. That even though that was the most local election, it had a national scope because it's the future of not only the Democratic Party, but what the next year's midterm elections are going to be all about. The Republicans lost the elections in New Jersey to the governor who wanted to lower the electric bills that have been raised against the population. And the Virginia elected a CIA Democrat who obviously is part of the right wing part of the Democratic Party. So the Democrats are claiming a victory, but all of this was overshadowed by Mamdani's victory in New York City. And his win is what made the Democrats the loser, despite the fact that the election was local. He was really running against the Democratic National Committee, and its leaders have announced their outright hatred, not only for him, but for the last year, for Bernie Sanders, for AOC, the Democratic National Committee, saying we have to prevent the party from turning left. We have to support Israel. We have to support Wall Street. We have to oppose progressive taxation and essentially doing what we've been doing all along, being soft core Republicans. And now all of that has been repudiated. And so Mamdani was running not only against the disgraced former governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, not only against the Republicans, but really against all of the money, the 40 million that you mentioned, that was all mobilized against him. And in that sense, he was defined not simply by his program of providing free bus rides and child care, but he was defined by his enemies who were attacking him by making all sorts of claims that he was a Marxist, a socialist, and it's as if the newspapers are too embarrassed to say that there have been public opinion polls that Richard and I have mentioned before on your show, that the voters prefer the word socialism to capitalism. Socialism isn't a bad word. So by calling him socialism for wanting to improve transportation, socialism for protecting tenants' rights against landlords, socialism for improving the lot of New Yorkers and progressively taxing wealth, he not only takes away the Democratic base, but the Republican base for this. And that the reason that the 40 billion million dollars came from wealthy Zionists wasn't because of his socialism. It was because they're trying to defeat him and what he's trying to do by the fact that what made people so passionate over this election was the whole issue of Zionism brought up by his opponents, such as the Democratic Senate leader, Chuck Schumer, who refused to support Mamdani, saying that Mamdani was defending the Palestinians against the Israeli bombing, and he could not support that. Well, what better support could you want from a New York population? And the fact that the over 70% of New York's Jewish population voted for Mamdani shows the attempt to slander him, how off taken it is. And if you look at the districts that were voted, the only districts that Mamdani lost were in the fundamentalist Orthodox Jewish Brooklyn area and the Queens near Long Island, who, of course, were saw that the election was all about Zionism. And a Wall Street Journal editorial today really, I think, spells out the story best of all. It said, if New York Governor Hochul turns left in next year's election for the governor, she may defeat her lieutenant governor, Antonio Delgado, who will run from the Mamdani left. But if Miss Hochul turns left, she may defeat Mr. Delgado, but leave herself open to a likely GOP Republican challenge from Representative Elise Stefanik. Well, Stefanik was the hectoring lady in Congress who attacked the presidents of Columbia and Harvard for permitting protests against the Israeli attack on the Palestinians. And she said she attacked these universities for not expelling students who opposed genocide, students who said the Palestinians are human beings, they're civilians, this is against the laws of war, it's against all international law. She said they must be expelled, and any professor who gives voice to a Palestinian point of view must be expelled from your university. Harvard and Columbia duly expelled the professors, expelled the students from the university. And if that is what the election for New York Senate is going to be all about next year, you can be sure that this is going to be splitting the whole U.S. electoral campaign, just as the split over Charlie Kirk has been splitting his right-wing Republican following over the issue of Zionism. And that's what the newspapers are hesitating from. The Republicans are afraid to acknowledge that that is what the election was about. They're pretending that it was about Marxism, and it's not about Marxism at all. There's nothing Marxist about providing subsidized education so that workers can afford to earn a lower salary for their employers and make their employers more competitive. I mean, that's basic 19th century classical industrial capitalist strategy to become more competitive. It's all really about the Zionist issue. And you can, in the Wall Street Journal, same issue. You have on the next editorial page, a Jewish writer saying, if socialists become the Democratic Party's face, he's going to be afraid to wear his kippah, his yarmulke, in public, and he bought a newsboy's hat because he thinks that somehow the Jewish population will be threatened. This is hysteria. And the hysteria is part of what has really motivated, I think, Mamdani's voters to say, we don't want any part of this. We're not going to go along with this demagogy that's applying it all. And I think Trump has already said that if New York voted for Mamdani, he's going to pull all public Washington federal support for New York out. And the Republican and Democrats want to treat New York City like the United States and Europe treated Soviet Russia after its revolution. Try to do everything you can to oppose it, to drain it, to isolate it, to make it harder to govern, and then say socialism doesn't work when they have to spend all their time defending themselves. This is what it's going to be about. In fact, I just got yesterday this month's Nation magazine, the left-wing magazine from the last century. And there's an article about how the Black Caucus in the United States has been dominated by AIPAC, and that had Black Caucus, the representatives in Congress, saying that if they do not follow the AIPAC pro-Zionist line, they will be opposed, and the AIPAC will fund their opponents in order to essentially mobilize election money for Zionism. So somehow this issue has overwhelmed the whole electoral process here.
Richard, looking at who voted for Mamdani, more than, the young people under the age of 30, more than 75%, 75% they voted for Mamdani. And here is what Donald Trump said before the election happened. He said, any Jewish person that votes for Zohran Mamdani, a proven and self-professed Jew hater, is a stupid person. And we know that Bernie Sanders, since the movement, Democrats, they didn't want to support Mamdani, but Bernie Sanders went after him. And we know what has happened to Bernie Sanders during the presidential election. This time he came and supported Mamdani. In those days, he had nobody to support him against Hillary Clinton. But what's your understanding of what has happened?
Well, I'm coming at it from a little bit of a different perspective from Michael, but I think they're complementary, or they can go together. I want to talk about the history here because I think this is a historic shift. It began with Bernie, no question. It was given an extra boost by Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez and the group of young women and men too, who came in prominence with her. And now it has taken a quantitative new additional leap with the election of Mamdani. But I want to talk about the hysteria in historical perspective. It ranges from the pathetic to the ridiculous. I mean, we are watching, whether it's the Wall Street Journal or Elise Stefanik or anything like that, spewing their hysterical reaction that makes no sense. It's a revelation of their ignorance. They ought to be embarrassed, and they will one day. What do I mean? Mamdani is a democratic socialist. He emphasizes the phrase democratic socialist, which he has every right to do. It is a kind of socialism that he advocates. It's very close to what used to be called municipal socialism. Why? Because it is the kind of limited, moderate policy changes that mayors have tried to do in American and in foreign cities for the last 2 centuries. It is not revolutionary. It doesn't usher in anything like the hysterical remarks being made by Americans. You know what this response shows? It shows that for 75 years, since the end of the Second World War, the United States has buried its head in the sand, pretended that socialism and communism, Marxism are all something evil and horrible over there. They haven't understood how it developed. They don't understand the different points of view within socialism. None of it. They don't know or care. And so they see a socialist. They don't understand how to understand it other than in their underdeveloped 75-year out of date backwardness. Let me get at this a second way. someone once counted up 75 American cities in the history of this country have had mayors who were socialists and said so. I know from my research, I did a lot of work once on the mayoralty in Bridgeport, Connecticut. I did that because I ran for mayor of the city of New Haven, Connecticut, which, like Bridgeport, is one of the three sizable cities in the state of Connecticut. Bridgeport had a socialist mayor for many years. Nothing of the sort of the hallucinations of the right wing happened in Bridgeport during the time of their mayor. Ditto Milwaukee, ditto and all the 75. Number one. Number two, right now in Europe, there are socialist mayors. A number of the major cities of Europe, by the way, places like Paris, London, Milan, and so on, are governed by socialists or have been at various moments in their history. Nothing of the fantasy horrors that are being spun out in the American media ever happened there. Socialist parties are regular participants in every country in Europe and beyond. But I want to talk about Europe, otherwise, I'll take too much time. So, what you're seeing in the response of the right wing in this country is a sign of its utter ignorance, bad education, and being, as I say, 75 years out of date. Talking like they talked back in the days of the House Un-American Activities Committee. Think of the very name, ridiculous, as if they had the sole authority to decide what is and isn't American. It's a joke. That's the first thing. The second thing, it's important to understand that I'm sorry,